I'm going to start. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for part 2 of our National Tasting Project virtual. For those of you who joined us last week, I am going to do a brief introduction to our moderators today. We have with us Aaron Mandel, our AWS wine leader extraordinaire. Aaron, as many of you know or should know, he's our director of education of the wine education programs for American Wine Society. He has been doing that since 2012. He oversees all the teams that handle all the wine courses offered through AWS. Wine Judge, AWS is, we have a Wine Judge certification program. It's a 3-year program. And for those of you who have not done that yet, it's certainly something unique to AWS and worth everyone doing. We also have a Super Taster series that he supervises as well. Aaron, in his spare time, he is a lawyer. He is from St. Louis, Missouri. He's also recently a cheesemaker. We're anxious to have some of his cheese one of these days soon. But during his wine time, Aaron is a certified WSCT diploma graduate. He also has been in the Master of Wine program. Aaron is a CSW as well through the Society of Wine Educators. He is also a mentor to students who are completing sommelier testing. And I also want to introduce Vince Williams. Vince Williams is the head of our PowerPoint that we're going to be doing today. He is our techie master. So if you have any technical questions, he's your man to ask. Aaron is also a AWS certified wine judge. He is a wine instructor and sommelier at a local wine specialty shop in his spare time. Aaron is also a CSW from the Society of Wine Educators and a level 3 WSET graduate. And WSET, so you know, stands for Wine and Spirits Education Trust. It is a British owned entity that is the prerequisite to the Master of Wine program. Vince has also completed the certification program of winemaking through the University of California, Davis. And we have with us as well, Melissa Bartlett. Melissa Bartlett is the creator of the PowerPoint that you're going to be seeing today for the National Tasting Project. Melissa is a fellow AWS certified wine judge, a certified sommelier, consultant, wine educator, and winery manager. She has also instructed the Super Taster continuing education courses offered through American Wine Society.
And let's not forget our National Tasting Project Chair, Sharon, who, aside from being an accomplished wine director, she is a fellow certified wine judge with the American Wine Society. She's a CSW and a WSET3 graduate. She's currently in the process of completing the WSET4 diploma, while devoting and dividing her time and volunteer time to us by successfully pulling off this year's national tasting of Washington state wines. Way to go, Sharon. Sharon Kervin.
So the sessions that we're offering, they're meant to supplement the National Tasting Project, not to replace your chapter tastings you're doing at home. So if you have an NTP scheduled for the future, please do not listen to this program today. Get off the Zoom, and you can listen to the recording later after your chapter has done their tastings. If you have done the tastings, then this is just a further education of Washington State appellations, and we'll be talking about the last 6 wines today that we have already tasted and scored to see. It's a good way to see how your scores compare with ours. I also want to touch base on a question I get a lot, which is, what is the National Tasting Project? It, before COVID, was a chance for chapters to get together person to person. It is the largest wine tasting of its kind. Our more than 7,000 members taste and score the same 12 wines that were chosen by the committee using our version of the Davis 20-point scale. It's a way to calibrate our palates, to see how we rank against one another, both certified and non-certified judges alike. It's just a way to see how we stand as a society of educators And we're a mix of educators, consumers, entrepreneurs, just people who love to drink wine. I call us professional drinkers, but in moderation, of course. So without further delay, I want to introduce Aaron to take it away with the PowerPoint. Thank you.
That would be Vince. Vince, take it away with the PowerPoint.
There you go, Vince.
Okay,
Take it over.
thank you. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Sharon. For the two presentations we're doing on Zoom, I've adapted the National Tasting Project presentation that Melissa put together for the chapters. That presentation was built last fall over the winter timeframe, and some of the things have changed, so we've updated that information. There's also a bunch of other references available for you on Washington wines built into the PowerPoint that is available online already. For today's session, we're going to be discussing the remaining 6 National Tasting Project wines. Hopefully you had that opportunity to judge those wines before we started today. So now you can sit back, relax with a glass of Washington wine as we go through today's wines and the American Viticultural Area, or AVAs, that they represent. The 2020 National Tasting Project is a study of Washington State. Over the last 20 years, Washington has grown from 4 AVAs to 15 approved. Today, I'm going to start with a brief recap of what we discussed last weekend. Washington's first grapes were planted in 1825 by the Hudson Bay Company at Fort Vancouver. Wine grapes followed the path of the early French, German, and Italian settlers. The Italian and German varieties were originally planted in the Yakima and Columbia valleys. Dr. William Clore, in your lower left-hand corner, is recognized as the father of Washington wine industry. During the 1960s, he conducted research on more than 250 American, European, and hybrid varieties. His meticulous research helped convince Washington winemakers and growers that they could grow vinifera. Also, commercial scale plantings began in the 60s. Using the Washington State 2019 precipitation map as an example, over 99% of wine grapes production takes place in the eastern half of the state because the west is just too wet. The Cascade Range, which is in the right next to Seattle over there, blocks most of those rains. The annual rainfall in the eastern is around 8 to 15 inches, which does require irrigation for those planted vineyards. Being closer to the North Pole than the equator grants grape growers 16 hours of sunlight during the growing season. That's 1 more hour than California's prime regions. As of May of 2020, the state of Washington ranks 2nd nationally in premium wine production with over 60,000 acres under vine. Washington produces approximately 19.4 million cases of wine annually. That's $8.4 billion in economic impact to the state of Washington. Washington wine would not be where it is today would it not be for the soils and rivers that flow through the eastern portion of the state. Those soils and river basins are a result of the Great Missoula floods, which occurred over a 2,000-year period beginning about 15,000 years ago. In this photo, we're depicting Lake Missoula over present-day Montana and Idaho. The ice cap blocked the Clark Fork River and began to form the lake behind it, and this was amplified by ice melts. Eventually, the ice weakened in the vicinity of the Clark Fork River, and Lake Missoula drained. This torrent of water traveling up to 80 miles an hour scoured the landscape as it traveled through western Washington state. As the water entered today's Columbia Gorge, the narrows forced the waters to back up into what's referred to as Lake Lewis. Let's take a few minutes and listen to geologist Nick Zentner from the Central University of Washington describe the aftermath of the flood. Maybe. Or maybe not. Okay.
Maybe not. Okay.
Guess we're not going to listen to the good geologist, but basically he would have showed us what the different landscapes look like today throughout the western portion of the state, and explain some of the resulting soil structures that are there now. So let's begin our discussions with the Columbia Valley AVA, then work our way from the north to the south in that AVA. The Columbia Valley AVA is the largest AVA in the world, established in 1984, and encompasses most of the Columbia Basin, including areas of Oregon. This large AVA is weighing in at 11 million acres, 17,000 of those currently under vine. This area encompasses approximately 99% of the wine grapes grown in the Washington state. The Columbia Valley AVA is further subdivided into 12 subregions: Ancients Lakes, Candy Mountain, which is real recent, Horse Heaven Hills, Lake Chelan, Natchez Heights, Rattlesnake Hills, Red Mountain, Wahluke Slope, another newbie, Snipes Mountain, Wahluke Slope, Walla Valley, and Yakima Valley. The 13th region, the Burn, has just completed its public review period and is back with the Alcohol, Tobacco Tax and Trade Bureau for their final consideration. The AVAs not included in the Columbia Valley AVA are the Lewis and Clark Valley, Puget Sound, and Columbia Gorge. Vineyards are planted predominantly on south-facing slopes, increasing solar radiation in the summer and promoting air drainage in the winter. The growing season lasts between 180 and 200 days, with the annual rainfall averaging from 6 to 8 inches. Early and late season frost and the winter freezes are the main environmental threats. In 2018, the Washington state as a whole produced over 250,000 tons of grapes. The 5 leading grapes are listed on the chart above and account for more than 75% of the production. Our first wine for discussion today is significantly sourced from Horse Heaven Hills AVA, however not sufficient enough to be labeled from that subregion. Low rainfall and proximity to the Columbia River yields concentrated fruits with depth, varietal expression, and refined texture and composition. Most of the Cab Franc comes from the Alder Ridge Vineyard in the Horse Heaven Hills. This vineyard has sandy soils and southern exposure, allowing the richness of the grape to come through. This place, against the proximity to the river, creates cool nights that maintain the variety's elegance and establish herbal tones. The winemaker Juan Munoz Oca keeps about 50% of the grapes on the skins after fermentation for approximately 9 months. This extended maceration extracts intrinsic qualities of the grape, mellow tannins, and created an unexpected silky texture, which adds to the complexity of the wine. 10% of the fermentation is done in concrete tanks. The Cabernet Franc juice fermented on Malbec skins, and the Malbec juice fermented on Cabernet Franc skins. This technique, which has developed over the years, is blending the Cabernet and Malbec and a study of the varieties, creates a balanced blend that showcases the best of each variety in their rarest form. Small amounts of Cabernet Sauvignon and Merlot were added for additional layers of complexity in the final blend. 50% of the final blend was aged in 100% neutral French oak for 9 months. Aaron, would you take us through the tasting for the audience?
Sure. This is a dark ruby. It was bright, clear, and reflective, so it got a 3 for the appearance. The aromas showed medium plus intensity. There was some candied Rainier cherry, vanilla, and I had eucalyptus. Sharon Curvin also had some green pepper, a lot of green pepper. And those aromas really followed through on the palate. It was balanced with medium body, and there was definitely some residual sugar on there as well. I gave the aromas 4 because we're dealing with decent intensity, but not very much complexity. And
Aaron, can you be louder? Do you have a volume?
don't have one for my mic. I can just get a little bit closer to it though. The palate was, I gave it a 4 also. This was, again, there's a lot of intensity on the flavors here, and it's a balanced wine, but it's not a very complex wine. And sometimes people confuse the intensity of the aroma and the
It's
flavors easily.
very hard to hear you, Aaron.
Is everybody having trouble hearing me?
Yes, a lot of people can't hear you.
Oh, okay. Don't know what's going on. All right, anyway, let's see if I can get
That's better. Now I can hear you.
And now you got to see me close up. The finish was only medium, Rainier cherry and eucalyptus. Yeah, so I gave that a 2. This is a good wine for the general market. To me, it's kind of like a nicer version of a Pothic. It's not a very exciting wine. It has a lot of intensity and a lot of fruit flavors and really a lot of oak, but it doesn't have the complexity that makes it a great wine or even a very good wine. So I gave this a 14.5, which is indicative of that it's a good wine, but just it's not. It shows that it's not a great wine by any stretch of the imagination. Sharon gave it a 15. Vince gave it a 13.5. And Melissa gave it a 14, so our average was 14.3, which would be a bronze for this.
I have a 2017.
Yeah, I
And
think 2017.
the blend on that is Malbec Cab Franc,
Yeah.
almost half and half. So it doesn't have the Cabernet Sauvignon in it or the Merlot. So my wine was just very vegetal. I found that predominant on my bottle.
And I shared wine with Sharon, and I found the same thing. I actually thought it was a nice little bit of green pepper for the Cab Franc, but it still overall was a little vegetal.
Yeah, I think the Cab Franc gives it the vegetal characteristics. Then the candied cherry probably comes from the Malbec. That would be my guess on the flavors in there. I mean, you're gonna get some cherry from Cabernet Franc, but it's unusual to have them candied.
Yes, strange combination, candied bell peppers.
Yes.
So this is a wine that was overall 14.3, a bronze medal, a decent wine, not a great wine.
Okay. So our second wine is also from labeled from the Columbia Valley AVA. This Merlot is sourced from the Eastern Washington vineyards in the Horseheaven Hills and the Wahluke Slope, as well as their Cold Creek Vineyard. Vineyards were selected for producing high quality ripe fruit, yielding wine with intense color and flavor. The grapes were destemmed and sorted using a cutting edge technology to gently handle the fruit and remove any green material, allowing for more pure concentrated fruit expression. Gentle pump overs were used to extract optimal flavor and color and minimize the harsh tannins. Finally, the wine was aged in 51% New American and French barrels. Aaron, can you go through our analysis?
Indian Wells Merlot. Yes, I can. Sorry, I was trying to figure out if I could fix the mic there. Again, the appearance was given a 3. You're talking about a medium here. With the aromas, I got black cherry and blackberry and thyme, medium intensity. Again, a 4.0. Some good decent intensity, but not very complex. The flavors followed the nose. There was a little bit of cedar in there, some moderately chalky tannins. I found the wine a little warm, but still balanced with medium plus body. I gave it a 4.5 for the flavors. And then there was a medium finish of cherry and blackberry. It's a good wine, I thought, for sipping. I like what I call back patio wines for after work in the evening, where you're not looking to open something great, but you want something that you can open up and drink on the patio after work and feel comfortable with. This is kind of one of those wines, I thought. Seven Falls. Sharon gave it a 14.5.
Oh, we're still
No,
in Indian Wells.
Indian Wells, I'm sorry. There it is. Sharon gave it a 16. I gave it a 14.5. Vince gave it a 14. Melissa gave it a 16. So 15.1. That puts it into the silver medal category, just barely by a 0.1. And that's where we were on that wine.
And this one I didn't argue strongly enough to bring down. I actually raised my score just a little bit because what we try to do when we're judging is be within a 2-point range. And if we don't, we have to do thumb wrestling. And so I lost the thumb wrestle and I actually came up a 0.5 point on the taste. But if I probably should have argued maybe a little more and just dropped that down to a bronze because again, this is not the.
Did we all have the 16?
I can't remember off the top of my head.
No, I had the 17. Sharon, you had the 16, and Vince had the 16. So I had a.
And that also happens when we're sourcing through the National Tasting Project, that you get some variation in vintages just based on what the source sends us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so my wine, I mentioned last week too, it traveled with me. I met Sharon at a rest stop in Delaware, brought it back in the little jars. It sat, I got some extra, airtime with my wine, even though she filled them all the way up to the top, I think. I didn't taste them till the next day. I thought it was a, reasonable bottle of wine. Third bottle, I think, is what we decided. Third bottle of wine of the night.
Okay. So we'll continue on to our next. In 2005, the Wahluke Slope was established. It consists of over 80,000 acres bounded by the Columbia River, Saddle Mountains, and Hanford Reach Monument. Only about 9,000 acres are currently under vine, primarily with red varieties, Merlot, Syrah, and Cabernet Sauvignon. You may also find some Riesling, Chardonnay, and some Chenin Blanc there as well. Fueled by a warm, dry climate with ideal soils, the Wahluke Slope vineyards are cooled by the wind and nourished by water of the mighty Columbia River flowing nearby, creating a perfect balance. Consistent weather produces consistent vintages. This AVA is the warmest and driest in the state, averaging less than 6 inches of rain annually. The entire appellation lies on a broad, south-facing slope and sits on a large alluvial fan with deep topsoil, gravelly sand, rocks, and loam. This soil style allows for ample drainage. Wahluke Slope wines tend to be ripe and full-bodied with pure varietal fruit flavors. Seven Falls Cellars was inspired by a series of 7 waterfalls that once flowed along the Columbia River through what is now known as the Wahluke Slope. Grapes were sourced from 4 select vineyards within the AVA, all bringing their distinct characteristics to the final blend. Indian Wells and Uriah vineyards bring lighter, smoother tannins and red fruit. Jones Vineyards brings bold and sweet tannins and dark fruit. And the Mattawa vineyards bring high acid, bright fruit, and structured tannins. The final blend was put together very early, just as the fermentation was finishing. This allowed the whole blend to marry and age together in harmony. The wine was then barreled in 37% new oak for 18 months, 34% French, and 66% American. Aaron, over to you.
Thanks, Vince. Again, this got a 3 on the appearance. There was nothing unusual about it or out of whack on the appearance. There was medium plus intensity on the nose, so it's a good note. But you could actually pick up the alcohol on the nose on this wine. This is a good example of a wine where things don't actually marry together well, and the alcohol comes out. There was some blackberry and black cherry, as well as vanilla on the nose. And the appearance or the flavor kind of followed, but the alcohol was again a little hot. Personally, I thought it was a little unbalanced due to the alcohol, not tremendously, so it's not going to be marked down a lot for that. But it was a little out of whack for that. Definitely full-bodied. When you get a wine that has that alcohol, you're going to have more likely a full body. And the finish, I thought, was mostly alcohol and blackberry. It was almost like a blackberry brandy. I didn't think the wine had any subtlety or finesse whatsoever. I gave it a 14. Which is just a bronze. Looks like everybody else. I mean, Sharon gave it a 14.5. Vince gave it a 16. Average score was 14.8, so it's a bronze.
Okay.
Yeah.
So go ahead and continue on. Located along Oregon border, Horse Heaven Hills is home to 37 varieties of grapes. The leading grapes are Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Chardonnay, Riesling, and Syrah. The region supports 31 vineyards and 6 wineries with its 570,000 acres. As you can see from the lower right-hand photo, this is a very dry location. Being on the Columbia River does allow for upriver winds to help moderate the temperatures. Comparing the Horse Heaven Hills with the rest of the Columbia Valley, this smaller AVA does get a long sunny days that are warmer and has predictable drops in temperature in October, keeping grapes on the vines longer. The soils consist of wind-blown sand and loess, Missouri flood sediment, and hill slope rubble. The terrain consists of south-facing slopes that provide excellent sun exposure for grape ripening and protection from the cold air flows during the winter months. Strong wind patterns in the Horse Heaven Hills reduce canopy size and density and contribute to even ripening in moderating temperature extremes. The vineyards in Horse Heaven Hills are the source of the inspiration between the H3 wines. The hills have been home to the Columbia CREST winery for more than 2 decades and is the heritage combined with innovative winemaking and vineyard knowledge that allows their winemakers to create wines that capture the unique terroir of the region. As new vintages are released, expect new labels as Columbia CREST has spun off the H3 line of wines into their own winery. For this vintage of their Chardonnay, as the grapes were delivered to the winery, they were pressed quickly but gently. 60% of the juice was fermented in a combination of new and older oak barrels from France and the United States. The remaining 40% was fermented in stainless steel to retain the minerality and fruit-forward characteristics unique to the Horse Heaven Hills region. All barrels were hand-stirred weekly. The wine aged in barrels for a total of 9 months. Aaron, would you let the audience know how we thought of this wine?
Sure. I did not have this particular wine. I ended up being sent something different. But generally the people, I mean, everybody scored this, and this was one of those, I was involved in a conversation about oak in wine today, and we were talking about Grenache, not Chardonnay. But Randall Graham said something that would apply to this, and he said that oak is supposed to be a condiment, not a food group. And the indications I got on this wine were that this was more flavored than kissed by oak, that the oak kind of dominated. It was in the foreground. So there was a lot of white vanilla. There was some orange and pineapple, but there was also a lot of butter. The feeling was that it was balanced with crisp acidity, but there was just too much oak character in the wine. So while it was scored well, because that is actually a style of Chardonnay, oak-dominated Chardonnay, the general feeling was that because the oak dominated too much, this wasn't a wine where you had enough complexity in the wine to really warrant a higher score. But Sharon gave it a 16 and Vince gave it a 15. Alyssa gave it a 16.5. So this was an average of 15.8, which gives it a silver. which, those oak-dominated Chardonnays often do well in competitions because that is a style. And this one sometimes you can't pick up anything other than the oak, but this one you could pick up some citrus characteristics. So it did have a little bit more than just the oak in the wine. So it got a silver.
And especially for the price, it's a
Oh, yeah.
$12 bottle of wine. I think someone who is into that style of wine would not disappoint.
Yeah, and we don't have the price of wines when we score them in competitions. We just know what's in the glass. But when you find out the price sometimes afterwards, even a silver, you're like, hey, for $12, that's not a bad wine. I think we said that last week with respect to the Columbia Valley Cabernet.
Yes.
So it's not a great wine, but for its price point, it's a pretty good wine.
Yep. All commercially feasible, like we talked about, would easily justify buying a bottle for the price
Oh, yeah.
for a barbecue, porch.
Yeah, if you're having people over, a lot of people love those buttery and oaky Chardonnays.
It wasn't overdone though. The butter notes were in the background. It had really a lot of ripe fruit and vanilla for me. Just that oak, the only thing was a little sharp, which dominated just a tad, which kept me from giving it a gold. But I felt for what it was quite balanced.
Also from the Columbia Crest H3 line, let us look at their 2015 Merlot. Winemaker Juan Munoz Oca combined innovative and traditional winemaking practices to highlight bold flavors in the wine that captured the unique terroir of the region. Grapes were crushed and then fermented 7 to 14 days on the skins to extract optimum fruit and structural components. Malolactic fermentation occurred in the stainless steel tanks and oak barrels. The wine was barrel aged in 66% older oak and 34% newer oak barrels, both French and American. And the aging was for approximately 15 months. Aaron, over to you.
Thank you. This wine, again, this was $12. This is $12 a bottle, so it's a reasonably priced bottle. But this one found medium aromatics with blackberry, black cherry, and vanilla. Again, not a lot of complexity in there. Lots of vanilla oak. This is a catnip wine. I don't remember who said it originally, but somebody once said that vanilla is like catnip for people. And this is a catnip wine. It's got a lot of vanilla oak in it. The vanilla kind of dominates the cherry and the blackberry. It's got a little bit of residual sugar, which people like to talk about not liking residual sugar in their wines, but wines with residual sugar sure as hell sell well because people really do like that. They like that. It helps bring out some of the fruity characteristics. This was a balanced wine, medium plus body, long vanilla finish. It's got a lot of vanilla in it and alcohol. I gave it a 15 because really it's not a very complex wine, but this is a wine that a lot of people are going to enjoy because of that vanilla. And let's see, this is Horse Heaven's Hills. Sharon gave it a 14.5. Vince gave it a 16.5. Melissa gave it a 16. So this is a 15.5, which is a silver medal wine.
Okay. Thank you, Aaron.
You're welcome.
I have it in my notes. I think, did some of us taste the 17 Merlot instead of the 15?
I have found that on this one, everybody tasted the 16.
Oh, okay. I also have in my notes, drink it now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't quite get that part. Mine's still there, so I'll have to do that tonight. One of the earliest Washington AVAs, the Walla Valley, is shared with Oregon. There's approximately 3,000 acres of land southeast of the Columbia River. While the Rocks district of Milton Freewater AVA lies within the Walla Valley AVA, it is not an AVA of Washington state. The area has hot days and cool nights and is prone to sudden temperature shifts. The soils are based upon Missoula flood sediments, wind-deposited silt and loess, and basalt cobblestone gravel. These soil types provide good drainage. This AVA is known for its superb Syrah. However, you also find some Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Cabernet Franc, Malbec, Sangiovese, Chardonnay, and Viognier in the vineyards. Walla Walla Reds tend to have a distinctive savory notes, earthy, black olives, smoked meats, and brine. Spring Valley Vineyard was established in 1897. The vineyards on the 111-acre farm was replanted in 1993. The grapes are hand-tended from planting to harvest. Spring Valley Vineyards lies 12 miles northeast of the city of Walla Walla, amid the picturesque wheat fields of the southeastern Washington and Blue Mountains in the distance. Uriah is named after the owner's grandfather who purchased the location in 1897. Spring Valley Vineyard fruit is hand-picked, hand-sorted, and gently destemmed by gravity. During the 10 to 20-day fermentation, each tank is tasted daily until Spring Valley Vineyard winemaker decides it's time to press using wooden cage basket presses. In keeping with Spring Valley's tradition, originally instituted by the founding winemaker, hand punch downs occur twice a day until the end of alcoholic fermentation. The wine is transferred by pump into barrels for secondary fermentation and gets racked several times for clarity. Aaron, would you provide our final evaluation?
Yeah, that would be on the Spring Valley Vineyards Uriah red wine. This is also 14.5% alcohol, but unlike the earlier wine that had that level of alcohol, the alcohol stood out. It doesn't really stand out on this one. You have an intense nose. I've had cedar, black cherry, blackberry, marjoram, and a touch of vanilla. There were intense flavors, which followed the nose. Balanced with medium plus body, some chalky tannins. There was a slight heat, but it was well integrated into the wine. So it's well balanced. Gave it a 5.5 on the taste because we have some complexity. We have we have a balance. We have integration. I had a medium plus finish of black cherry and cedary oak. I thought this was a very good effort. We have intense aromatics and flavors. We have some complexity in the wine. I gave it a 17.5. And let's see, Sharon gave it a 17.5. Vince gave it an 18 and Melissa a 17. So this ends up being 17.5 on average, which was a double gold. One note, Vince did have the 2014, whereas the rest of us had the 15. So this one we gave a gold medal to.
And since we all came up with a gold, that actually would have scored as a double gold. So I did have a note in mind. So like Aaron mentioned, I had the a previous vintage. If you have the 2014, I put a note down, drink the 14 now. We kind of made a decision that the way the colors are turning on the 14 versus what's in the 15, we're right at that sweet spot on those wines. So at the 15 was exactly the same as the 14. You probably want to drink the 15 in the next year as well.
Someone had the 2014, they said was totally different. I'd like to.
Yeah, that's what Vince had, I think.
Yeah. So it,
Okay,
it was more the tertiary components were coming out more. So
a lot of green from the Cab Franc. Pat. A lot of green from the Cab Franc, she says.
You didn't really pick up a lot of green. I mean, the Cabernet Franc, you expect to have a little green pepper in there. Otherwise, no,
From the Cab Franc, yes. Well, it's.
In which case, Cabernet Franc is completely different in Napa than it is anywhere else.
When I found out the price point, I was like, meh.
Yeah, I know. It's like $42 or something like that.
$2, $43.
Yeah.
So this was, you know, one of those that you're like, well, I don't know if I want to spend $42 for it, even though it's about.
Well, we each thought it was a gold, so maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
It just wasn't our best buy.
Yes, not a Best Buy. Yes.
A good wine, but not a Best Buy. There are better wines, and for $42, you can get some pretty nice wine. You don't have to have that.
Yeah.
And I think that was our final wine, correct? Anybody have any questions about the wine or about the National Tasting Project? Or about the presentation? How is everybody enjoying these presentations that we're putting on? Yeah, this was the first.
Mute everybody.
This is the first time we've done this, so you know.
I'd like to talk about next year, National Tasting Project.
I just thought that maybe we'd see if anybody had any questions.
Questions first.
Okay, I'm going to unmute everybody.
Anybody want to say anything?
Average for the 7 falls was, I think it was a bronze, wasn't it?
Hang on, I'll bring the chart
All
back
right,
up.
what was our group average for the 7 falls?
What's that?
Someone was asking the group average for the 7 falls.
14.8.
Is that Herman?
Who?
Herman?
Yeah, it's definitely here.
Oh, just,
He'd moved.
just, Kevin's there though.
I think he.
There he is.
I don't know if that's not Herman.
You don't think so?
It might be.
It is.
Does somebody have a question? You started to talk on each other, so just try to.
Rush there, yep. Yeah, and he's trying to connect to audio. Kevin's there.
When we get old, we have to keep up with technology.
A lot of comments about drinking different vintages.
I know.
Unfortunately, that's going to happen every year. It depends on when you buy the wines for the project and where you're buying them from. A lot of retailers will have different vintages and they're going to get rid of what they have first before they sell a newer vintage. But sometimes you can ask them if they can get you the current vintage or a different year, and sometimes they will order it for you. Depends on how good of a relationship you have with your retailer near you.
I actually had the Spring Valley Ukiah last year? A couple years ago. I don't remember paying $42. That's a high price. By the way, Walla is expensive. Higher, more average. I mean, everything seems like it starts at 50. Or it's rare that you find 40s and 30s if you go to the wineries. It's really high in price.
Any other questions?
I was just answering a question online about the slides and how difficult it is, you know, to follow along with the original program. I think next year, at the very beginning, a suggestion we should put in the front of the slides, the winery's suggested tasting order versus how we're going to cover it if we happen to do this virtually again. So that when you break it up into 2 separate tastings or you pick your wines, that I make it perfectly clear that these couple of slides go with this wine, these couple of slides go with that wine. So that the original organizations can pick and choose which wines cut and paste into a new format for themselves. Because yeah, that is confusing.
Any other questions?
I see on that, is there any way we can all taste the same vintage? And then if we can send out a copy of the new order of the presentation slides at Vince. Your slides, Vince.
So yeah, all the videos from last week and this week, we're going to post it on the YouTube with a link off to the AWS website, which has on the chapter chair and resource page, I think it's what it's called. There'll be a link to our YouTube page. So it should be up there hopefully by the end of the week, both of them. I already have got the one from last week ready to go. And the actual presentations are huge. They're probably running about a half a gig, so I can't email them to anybody, unfortunately. The video is a much smaller. Way to go.
I know it was really hard when I originally did the PowerPoints. There was way too much information, and it was so hard to email it just to headquarters to get them to disseminate it. So maybe there'll be some changes in technology might make it easier for everyone to get the same. Well, I know I had to ship it in several different chunks before, and to different people wanting some different stuff, I would have to chunk it and send it. And then it's so easy to get confused that way.
Well, if we don't have any more questions, I want to just recap with first thanking Kristen Kraft for the Survey Monkey. Reminding everyone that's listening to please fill out the Survey Monkey. It literally takes about a minute to just put your scores in and do them individually. So if there are 10 of you listening in, you should just submit 10 different scores. It's anonymous. It doesn't ask for your name. Just put your scores in and send it in. Those scores will be tabulated separately from the chapter chairs that are meeting doing the NTP blind. Those scores will be on a separate summary sheet. So please get your scores in. We will do a separate Zoom score tabulation in January because the new deadline for national tasting is in January. After that time, we'll start sending the materials out for the National Tasting Project 2021, which hopefully we'll be able to meet by then as chapters, hoping that all of this pandemic is over with and the vaccine is in place and everyone is back to normal or as much of normal as possible is the goal. If not, we may do another one of these Zoom sessions, or we may just do another Zoom session at the end, towards the end of the NTP when everyone's turned in their scores, just because it's a good way to see how our scores from the committee compare against everyone else's. Could be something fun to do. But the topic for next year, should we do a drum roll? It's the wines of Illyria. Namely Croatia, Bosnia, and Herzegovina. We are going to set it up to where you can do 2 tastings from the separate countries, or you could do a combination tasting of the 2 countries together. This is a great way to explore wines you've probably never had before. A lot of their native grapes that are certainly very interesting and certainly of high quality. These countries have been making wines for a very, very, very long time. Some of the first countries to make wines are in this region, these regions. So it's something certainly from an educational standpoint will be something very interesting. A lot of amphora and different processes they use to make their wines, very hands-on, very artisan, which a lot of the modern day wineries are adapting those ancient principles to make their wines now. So it's something certainly worth exploring. So hopefully we'll all see you participating next year.
We do have another question before we get offline. Repeat the score on the 7 Falls, please.
14.8 average. That was a bronze.
Suggestions of wine from...
Hi, Eric.
Hello, Sharon. How are you?
Good.
Hey, Eric.
Did you have a question?
Oh, no. Does it show that I have a question?
Oh, you're just big on screen. I just thought you might want to have a question.
Oh, sorry. I was typing a thank you to you, but I guess that's why I'm big on screen. Thank you for a great event. This was wonderful tasting.
I'm glad you liked it.
And by the way, I didn't have I couldn't find the 2015 Uriah. So I had a bottle of 2008 in my cellar, and I took it out by Corvin, and it was drinking wonderfully.
Great.
Good.
Trade you my 14.
I think that's it.
Sharon, could you, if you happen to have some more information
That's
on
Sharon
the,
McCarthy. Hi, Sharon.
uh,
Sharon McCarthy, guys, from Bonfy.
Oh, hi, Sharon.
And she's Skyping.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
I hope everyone's going to listen to Sharon's presentation for the virtual conference. Sharon from
Oh, yeah, we've got lots of information on Brunello, more than you would ever want.
No such thing as more than we.
Oh, wait till you see this presentation. Oh, my God.
Are there any wines that we can cut our teeth on? Any suggested wines, Aaron, that we can cut our teeth on for the Croatia Bosnia wines?
Oh, just wait till you see what you're gonna get. I mean, they're gonna have all sorts of different wines. And when I get wines from Eastern Europe, I'm usually honestly getting a lot of Flavic Mali, wines of that nature, which I happen to really enjoy. Saporiva, and I don't know what kind of wines they're going to be providing us.
We haven't chosen them yet.
Yeah, it's you get some Arcatatelli, which can make really good wines. Unfortunately, a lot of people's knowledge of that variety stems from when the Soviets were growing it in huge amounts and was making crap. But it can make a very good wine. If you've had the Arcatatelli out of Frank Vineyard up in the Finger Lakes, you know that you can make a good wine out of it.
Mhm.
And then are we going to have any, do you know if we'll have any amber wines or orange wine for this?
I think she's submitting some orange wines as well. So it should be very interesting. I know she has, there's also some rosés in there too.
Oh, good. That's very good.
So should be a nice, very tasting.
There are so many different wines that are coming out of there.
I have a question. What do you mean by orange wines?
Orange wine, there are some, normally when you make a white wine, you crush it right away, take the juice, and you ferment that. Orange wines have some time on the skin. So you're actually getting some phenolics out of the skins, a little bit of color out of the skins, but they're not going to, you have white grapes. You're not going to get red wine out of it. But you do get an amber kind of characteristic to it. They sometimes get a bad reputation because some people that have made them, they're very oxidized and have some problems, but you can get some very clean, very beautiful orange wines. It's just a white wine that has a little bit of tannin in it, a little bit heavier than some of the white wines that we're used to, but they can be lovely.
Yep.
They can really be good.
I'm going to say white wine with tannin.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Saperavi. Yeah, Saperavi. Saperavi I consider a really good wine for burgers. Try a hamburger with some Saperavi.
I know I spelled it wrong, I think.
Yeah, short ribs.
No, I think you spelled it right.
Short ribs and Saperavi, I love that. I think that's great. But short ribs and red wine, it's hard to miss.
Just short ribs, it's hard to miss.
Any other questions?
Not a question, but more of a comment. I just want to say that as a new member out of Las Vegas, Nevada, and this whole COVID thing, we only got to go to one meeting when we first joined. This has been absolutely lovely, and I really appreciate all the hard work behind the scenes that goes into this. We ordered all our wines off of Total Wines and got to do curbside pickup, and there were some vintage substitutions, but it still made it for an absolute lovely two tastings in the midst of this craziness of a pandemic. And we've also moved. So we were moving just a mile away to a new home, and it was just a nice break in between unpacking to come and turn the Zoom on and just listen to y'all and get to know y'all's feelings about the different wines and who I agreed with and who I might not have agreed with on the tastings. But it was just an absolute joy. And I really do look forward to the next one and being more involved with my local chapter as soon as we're allowed to be. So more than anything, I just want to say I'm very grateful to the hard work that those of you who have put this together put in. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening.
Jenna, please.
Jenna, did you use?
Please attend the conference. I think you'll love that. I think you'll really enjoy that as well.
I do have one question though. Is there any way or is there any thought to letting us know when certain wines are vegan? Just because I try to stick to vegan wines when I can. Erin, that looks like a tough question.
I think you're talking about she's talking about the finding filtration methods.
Yeah, really be challenging because depending upon the organization, sometimes finding products are not considered and sometimes they are. And I wouldn't want to tell you that a wine is vegan if they've used egg whites for finding tannins, or sometimes you use fish bladder for finding a color. And those are not, to me, technically vegan wines. But we could always make a check and see if we can find out any information on that in order to.
I appreciate that because I do belong to the Vegan Wine Distribution Club, and so there are wines I keep in a separate wine jail, and I know that those are certified vegan. But if there's any way to maybe possibly, let us know in an email when we're preparing for a tasting, if you know that they were sourced that way, I would appreciate it.
I think for 2021 wines, we could find out because the woman who's providing the wines is in direct contact with all the wineries.
That's beautiful.
She represents those wineries in this country. So she can certainly find out what they're using for finding and filtration to make sure if something's not vegan, we'll be able to note that in the PowerPoint. So
I appreciate
we'll
that.
put it in the notes for the Excel packet so you'll know, well, these wines are, these wines aren't. So you can pick and choose what works for you.
I appreciate that. Thank you again. And I just want to express my gratitude. You guys are really amazing.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Any other questions or comments or?
I think we're good.
I was asked whether I can do a YouTube tasting on orange wines. If you really would like me to do a YouTube tasting on orange wines, I'd be happy to do one. I'd have to find the right orange wines to taste. I can tell you that, again, Frank Winery, they've got a good amber Arcatatelli.
There's quite a few making orange wine now.
Yeah.
We had a tasting, and I can't remember who the MW was that she had brought up a bunch of orange wines a couple of years ago for us all to do a tasting. And there were the usual issues with some of them, with oxidation, or with sometimes you get lactic bacteria issues. Because some of them are natural wines and sometimes they don't travel well overseas. But the Arcat from the Finger Lakes that Frank Winery made was one of the favorites because it was just a very well-made orange wine. So, but I'll be happy to do an orange tasting probably sometime next year.
There you go.
If you guys want to send me recommendations, I see somebody said King Family Winery in Virginia. If you guys want to send me recommendations of orange wines that you think would be good for a tasting like that, I'd be thrilled. And I'll try to find some odd ones as well.
Someone just said,
Yeah, Aaron, Channing Daughters out of the Long Island is also making some good orange wines.
yeah.
Okay. Good.
And there's some in Friuli too, in Italy.
Oh yeah. There's some. There are a lot in Croatia. So some of them are very good.
And it doesn't have to be just the orange wine. If you have other classes you want taught, we can definitely take a look at those for other events, other Zooms. Also, the crew club is working on different ones. So a whole bunch of opportunities out there, especially if we have to stay like this much longer.
Someone is asking if we can give them suggestions to practice their palates.
Oh yeah, that's what we were talking about, I think, with all the different orange wines. With the Arcatzelli and the Saperavi varietals to try.
The one thing I did when I was starting to learn wines is I joined a wine club, not from a given winery, but just a general wine club. And they would send me 2 wines every month. I did not tell them what varieties to send me. I did not tell them reds or whites, because that way I'd get different wines, different varieties from different locations that I didn't know, that I wasn't familiar with. And it gave me an opportunity to try a lot of different varieties from different countries. And I'd also go, right now you can't go to wine stores and do tastings, but when things break, which hopefully they will, you go to wine stores and try their tastings too. And don't always drink the same thing. We all have a comfort space that we're very happy with. We like to drink a particular type of wine. Get something different. Get something that is you've never even heard of, that you can't pronounce. Look on Google. There are great pronunciation tools on Google that'll help you pronounce it. But just taste it. And if you like it, great. If you don't like it, it's a new variety for you. You can try the Century Club, which is on the internet. That's for trying 100 different varieties. And not wines, but varieties. And you can do that, and that'll help encourage you to try different varieties. You can try wines from countries you've never heard of, or you have never tried wines from, not that you haven't heard of, hopefully you've heard of them, but try wines from countries that you've never had their wines before. It's just a matter of always trying new things and always forcing yourself to leave your comfort zone. It's just the best way to do it. And if you want to take an aroma wheel, and when you're tasting, sometimes that can be helpful to just look at it and say, do I taste this? Do I taste that? Because it's hard. I mean, when you're starting out, it's very hard to be able to identify the different fruits and flowers and flavors that you're picking up in a wine. I mean, nobody's born with the ability to do that. It's all a matter of training yourself to do it, and it takes a lot of time. But it's fun. Once you start.
Pat is asking, what is our consensus on using the small bottles on the tastings?
I haven't done that yet, so.
I haven't done it either.
So this is Jim Fenler from Lake Erie Eastern chapter. Regarding the bottles, we used those for this tasting and they worked out wonderful. We were able to fill just a little over 2 ounces into the top of the bottle and cap it, and they've held up very well. Regarding the, I did have a comment. So our chapter actually did the wines that were made to the Qvevri process that's used in the Republic of Georgia, natural fermentation. They did have, we purchased from the Pheasanttier winery out of Astor Wines in New York City. They had the Arcatzelli, Saperavi, Kissi, a number of Republic of Georgia Qvevri wines that were amber. And also regarding the Saperavi, in the Finger Lakes, Standing Stone and Shale Stone use the Saperavi grape. They don't do it to natural wine fermentation. They use stainless, they use oak, but they're very excellent wines.
Oh yeah.
Right.
So Blue Danube out of California is where we ordered the other group of wines. We did discover with importing the wines that it was difficult to get some of them delivered into Pennsylvania. But we had some of the wines actually sent to friends that were in Florida and had them brought back with us. Even with all the handling, I would say overall the wines, they were very unique. I think to what Aaron said is you kind of have to open your mind up to some new tastes and new experiences, but many of them came out very nice.
Yeah. Some of them are very good. Anything else, or are we done, folks?
Pat said her chapter's been using the small bottles for 5 months. Did it have any effect on scoring?
I don't know if we've broken anything down for that.
No.
I know that, you know, we talked quite a bit about, you know, me using the little jars that I did, and then how it did, if I didn't taste it immediately, I tasted it the following day, and we, you know, as a panel, we noticed a difference. I noticed a difference. But it's hard when you're judging what's in the glass, because whether you're core venting it directly from a bottle, putting it in the glass, and then opening up another bottle, pouring it, moving it back and forth, you're still going to have a little bit of difference, I think, in the wine. Well, I mean, I noticed a difference.
She even did sparkling in small bottles. I think the key for that, Pat, is to just do the tasting right away. Like if your chapter lives near each other, everyone could get their bottles
immediate, yeah,
that day, and then do the tasting that day, like later that day. So there's not a time lapse, like Melissa had a day time lapse, to where there's some oxidation that happens. If you can do it and taste them all that same, you know, a few hours later, that would be ideal. I think then that would be fine. I think they would hold up. I don't think there's going to be any way to do a separate scoring on that, though. We have the NTP chapter scores, and then we have this Zoom score. I think that's really the maximum we're going to be able to do with breaking out the scores.
Yeah.
We are a little further spread out than that.
Yeah.
So then you have oxidation that's going to come into play if they're not trying them, if you're not distributing them the same day.
Right.
This is Jim Finland. Oh, sorry.
I was going to say the only other thing you could do is go ahead, core venom, send them out, but core ven yours the same day, you know, and put it in the glass.
That only helps you.
Or you use the same procedure.
Well, at least that's good
core
for,
in your
good for
bottle
you.
into a small bottle, so that when you do the tasting, there's no difference between you and your group.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think.
We distributed our bottles, and we drank them within 12 hours of changing from the wine bottle to the small bottle. I guess the only other point I'd say to that, it was better than no bottle at all.
Well, and it shares
for whatever that's worth, and for us, it was worth a lot. So thank you for the idea of whoever came up with that.
That's Jay Belletti. Jay Belletti.
Jay Belletti, AWS, yeah.
It was great.
Right. Any other questions? Pat, I hope I see you on the 8th. You and Walt, I believe, are coming on the 8th.
You guys want to carpool?
I'll let you coordinate that with them.
All right.
Also Dave Barber.
Got it.
Makes sense.
I guess we'll see you hopefully in November for the conference.
Small bottles reignited interest in AWS. Good.
It's fun.
All right, everybody.
That's it.
Okay.
Don't forget to go to SurveyMonkey.
Yes, SurveyMonkey. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye, everybody. Nice to see you all.
Bye. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye. Till next time. Are we hanging on?
Yeah, go ahead and close her down.
All right, Vince. You
Have a
guys,
good one.
thanks so much.
You're welcome.
All your hard work, guys. You guys did a great job.